Winter, 1885. Montana Territory. Snow came down in sheets, erasing the road and the fence line in the same white hush. A girl's hand, small, stubborn, held a diary page to the wind above a graveyard of crooked stones. The Whitlows will have no heir, the faded ink warned, and the old woman beside her whispered, "Until love breaks it." Years later, in a cold kitchen of the Whitlow ranch, Elara warmed her fingers over a cook stove and watched her mother's silver watch catch the fire. She never told her father what the inscription inside had done to her heart. The front door banged once, like a shot. Captain Horace Whitlow filled the doorway with wet wool and winter air. Snow salted in his beard. He hung his coat on a nail, took one look at the pot, another at the table, and then at nothing at all. A letter stuck from his breast pocket like a blade. "Evening," Elara said. Her voice made the steam shiver. He grunted, set the letter on the table, and thumbed open the whiskey he said he didn't carry anymore. "Bank's calling. 2 weeks," he said. "Maybe less." He drank. "We do this clean. We don't beg." Elara ladled stew. "Mrs. Keene's baby's due early. She offered pay if I sit the nights. Doctor could use a hand. I can... No." The word cracked hard. He kept his eyes on the window, as if the dark out there might salute him back. "No Whitlow scrubs linens or plays nurse. We were officers once." "We're hungry now," she said, softer than the stove's sigh. He took the bowl, ate 3 bites like orders, then pushed it away. The watch on the shelf, her mother's, flashed again. Elara reached for it, thumbed the lid open, read the line she knew by touch. "The truth shall set you free." She could feel the line burn a little. She closed it before he could see. "You've been staring at that thing all afternoon," he said, the way men talk to a mirror. "What's it tell you? Time's up?" "It keeps me steady," she said. "That's all." He laughed without heat. "Steady won't save a ranch." He pulled the letter closer, tapped it with the bottle's neck. "I made a purchase. Delivery tonight." "Of what?" He waited a beat, letting the room learn it. "A horse. War-bred. Judge's mercy. Blood back to Kentucky. He'll carry us out." Elara kept her breath even. "With what money?" "Money isn't the issue. Faith is." He set the bottle down, too gently, the way you set down something you might break. "You gentle him. He'll turn the herd, win the meets. I'll train him to take the bit. We're not losing this land." The wind leaned on the eaves. Somewhere a board answered. Elara wrapped her hand with a dishcloth, though the handle wasn't hot. "Father," she said, "some animals don't take to force. They take to song." She hummed a bar her mother used to hum in a tent that smelled of carbolic and blood. The note hung in the kitchen like a quiet set at a table. His jaw worked. "Songs are for churches and graves," he said. "This is a ranch." She met his eyes. They were her eyes, too, only older and rimmed with sleeplessness. "Let me start at the clinic," she tried again. "We need coin more than pride." He looked past her, past the shelf and the watch, and the simmering pot, to a place only he could see. Brown fields, a skirmish line, a brother's shape falling out of a gray sky. His hand shook once. It stopped. "We will not be cursed and crawl," he said. "We will stand." Alara didn't say curse. She said nothing. She set out bread, poured coffee. She let the silence choose sides. Boots crunched on the porch. The dog under the stove, half cattle, half mutt, lifted his head and growled, then thought better of it. Horace's shoulders squared by habit. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and took the letter up, as if showing it made it less true. "That'll be them," he said. Alara looked at the window. Snow peeled away under a lantern sway, 2 men in chapeau. Army coats led a black shape big as a memory. Its breath steamed and drifted like smoke from a field hospital fire. When the door opened, cold rolled over the floorboards and lay there, heavy as a man. "Captain Whitlow," the elder said. "Delivery as agreed. Judge's mercy." Up close the horse was all nerve and shine, eyes too wide for comfort, ears twitching at each hinge squeak, each word. Scar along the withers, nick under the jaw. Alara saw the way the lead rope threw tremor into a man's hand. "Back him out to the yard," Horace said, command cutting through the room like a saber that had missed its war. "He learns the place tonight." The men hesitated. "He's spirited, sir." "Then he'll meet a firmer spirit," Horace said. Alara stepped between the stove and the door. Her hands were steady now. "Let me see him first," she said. "Just a minute." The dark's loud to his kind. Horace's mouth tightened. "We don't coo to animals." She took the watch, slipped it into her apron, and walked out into the yard before he could stop her. The snow tasted of tin. She stopped 3 paces off the horse's shoulder and set her voice where spooked things could find it. Low, simple, the kind you use when you're binding a wound and lying that it won't hurt long. The horse's ears flicked toward her. He breathed once, longer. The whites of his eyes dimmed a shade. "See?" she said without turning. "He understands patience." Behind her, leather creaked. Horace's boots came up hard. He took the rope, yanked once to show the world where the line was. The horse surged, iron shod, the snow under him shattering like dishes dropped on a church floor. Alara moved without thinking. Her body felt light and sure, as if some other time were moving her. 10 years old, a cot in canvas light, a nurse's hand teaching her a knot. She put her palm under the horse's breath, breathed back. "Easy," she said. "Easy." The wind quieted for half a second, as if to listen. Then something in the rope sang a pitch too high. A strand went. The horse rose like a prayer that had lost its words, hooves black with winter, and Alara saw the nails and the steel and her father's unguarded chest. She stepped into the blow. The world flashed white, then blue. Somewhere the watch thumped against her ribs. Somewhere her father shouted a name he hadn't used since she was small. When the snow settled, she was on her side, breath stuck, a hot wire sawing up her leg. The sky was the color of iron. It did not move. "Get up," her father said, voice far away and furious with fear. "Elara, get up." She tried, and her right leg said no in a voice she could feel in her teeth. Her left ankle burned like it had been twisted out of shape by a hand that didn't know mercy. The horse snorted, stamping, then stood trembling as if ashamed. Horace looked from her to the animal and back again. The wind picked up the edge of his coat. He reached for the bottle without looking, found it, and didn't drink. His mouth formed a word he hadn't let himself say in years. "Curse," he whispered. Elara's fingers clawed at her apron until they found the watch. The lid clicked open. The old line was there, steady as a heartbeat. "The truth shall set you free." The porch lantern flickered. Out on the road, somewhere in the white, a distant dog barked 3 times and ran like it had a reason. The storm eased by morning, leaving ice thick on every fence rail. Judge's Mercy stood in the pen like a black ember that refused to die. His breath smoked, his eyes still wide from the night before. Horace Whitlow moved through the gate with a rope and a will that had survived wars. His shoulders squared, boots cutting through the frost. Elara limped behind on her good leg, a crutch under her arm, the other wrapped in linen and stubborn hope. "Stay back," he said. "I can help," she answered. "You already did enough." He looped the rope once around the rail, testing the give, the kind of measured calm soldiers use before chaos. "This horse learns respect, or he leaves us both starving." Elara leaned on the fence. "He's not angry," she said softly. "He's afraid." Horace didn't look at her. So was I. Fear doesn't feed cattle. He stepped closer. Judge's Mercy threw his head, whites flashing. The rope hissed through Horace's hands. The sound pulled something old and cold into the yard. The echo of command. The bite of obedience. Elara's fingers gripped the post. "Father, wait!" But he'd already jerked the line hard, snapping leather against hide. The horse reared, hooves pawing at sky. Snow sprayed like glass. Horace shouted something from a place deeper than anger. The rope slipped once, burned his palm, caught again. "Easy," Elara called. "Please." The horse's chest hammered the air. She could feel it even from the fence. That thrum of panic she'd felt herself under his temper, under the weight of his silence. She took a step forward, pain flaring from her splinted leg. "He'll break himself." Horace yanked the rope again. "Then let him learn." Judge's Mercy spun, the line snapping taut, dragging Horace half a yard before he caught his balance. The horse crashed against the pen, wood splitting in a dull scream. For a heartbeat, everything stilled. The wind, the birds, the world. Then Elara started humming. The same lullaby her mother used to hum in tents that smelled of smoke and antiseptic. Soft, steady, barely sound. The horse's head turned toward her, ears twitching. The rope sagged slightly in Horace's hand. He looked at her like she'd spoken a foreign tongue. "Stop that nonsense." "It's working," she said. He pulled again. "We do not whisper to curses." Judge's Mercy jolted, reared once more, eyes rolling white. The rope whipped loose, slapping Horace across the wrist. The hook on the post gave way with a cry of iron. The horse lunged. Elara didn't think. She dropped the crutch and threw herself forward, catching her father's sleeve, shoving him down. Just as the hooves struck, pain shot bright and hot through her leg. The splint cracked, bones screaming. She hit the ground hard, snow in her mouth, breath gone. The sky went gray at the edges. When she blinked, Horace was kneeling beside her, face twisted in something raw. Elara. She couldn't answer. The cold was running fast through her limbs. He looked at her leg, saw what she couldn't. Blood blooming through the linen. He staggered up, stumbling toward the house, shouting for Silas. Elara turned her head toward the fence. Judge's Mercy stood trembling, nostrils wide, ropes dangling like shame. She whispered, "Easy, boy," though her throat was dry as ash. The horse bowed his head, breath rising like forgiveness. Her fingers found the watch in her pocket. The hinge caught the light. She opened it with effort. The same words gleamed, steady as a promise. "The truth shall set you free." Wind cut through the yard, sharp and sudden. Somewhere beyond the hills, a dog barked 3 times and went silent. Horace's boots pounded back, Silas behind him with a blanket and a flask. "We'll fix this," Horace said, voice cracking between orders and prayers. "You hear me? We'll fix this." She tried to smile, but the pain blurred everything. Snow fell thicker, covering the fence, the footprints, the rope. Horace looked from her to the sky and back, his face pale against the cold. The words came out before he could stop them. "It's the curse. It's come for me." Elara wanted to tell him no, that it was only fear wearing an old name, but her voice wouldn't come. The dog's bark echoed once more, closer this time, followed by the faint jingle of tack and a lantern's glow moving through the snow. The world tilted, light narrowing to a thin gold thread. Then darkness took the rest. The night dragged on with the sound of wind crawling across the plain. The lamps burned low, throwing soft halos over the room. Elara lay half-conscious on the cot, her breath thin, her legs splinted by Silas with a rough plank and torn sheets. The pain came in waves, breaking against her like the tide on rock. Horace sat beside her, shoulders heavy, eyes fixed on the wall where his shadow quivered. The bottle lay unopened on the floor. For once, he didn't reach for it. "Keep her warm," Silas said quietly. "If she makes it through till dawn, we'll get help." Horace nodded, but said nothing. Outside, Judge's Mercy stomped in his pen, the chain clanking like a restless conscience. Horace stared into the dark window and saw nothing but his own reflection. And behind it, the battlefield that never left him. Elara stirred, whispering through cracked lips. "It's not the horse's fault." He leaned close. "Rest, girl." "You pulled too hard," she breathed. "He just got scared." He clenched his jaw. "Don't talk." Her eyes fluttered. "You're afraid too." Horace turned away, the words cutting deeper than her wound. He stepped out into the yard, snow already crusting over the footprints from earlier. Judge's Mercy lifted his head, eyes soft now. breath curling like smoke from a tired engine. Horace approached the rail, hand trembling as he reached out. The horse didn't move. Only the wind answered. "It's all a curse," Horace muttered. "It follows me everywhere." The horse shifted, one hoof scraping snow, calm as confession. Horace let the rope fall loose, then turned back toward the house. Inside, Alara's skin burned. Fever made the ceiling pulse and bend. She clutched the silver watch against her chest, whispering the words she could barely see. "The truth shall set you free." Before dawn, the fever broke. When she woke, Silas was gone to fetch the doctor, and her father slept in the chair, head bowed, hands black with dirt and guilt. Alara looked at him and saw not the soldier, not the tyrant, but a man lost inside his own silence. For a moment, she almost reached out. Almost. The front door creaked. Horace stirred, alert, like a man back in uniform. Silas stepped in, snow-dusted, breathless. "The road's drifted over," he said. "No doctor coming." Horace cursed under his breath. "Then she'll die here." "Not if someone passes by," Silas said. "There's a crossroads 5 miles east. Riders use it before sunrise." Horace looked at his daughter, pale, fragile, her hair stuck with sweat. Something broke behind his eyes. "Saddle the sled," he said hoarsely. "We'll take her there." Silas hesitated. "Sir, that's... do it." An hour later, the sled creaked through the snow, Alara wrapped in a blanket, her breath shallow. Horace sat rigid in the cold, hands gripping the reins until his knuckles cracked. When the faint shape of the crossroads appeared, he slowed. He looked down at her face so still it frightened him. The wind hissed through the pines, carrying whispers that might have been his brother's voice. "You left me." Horace swallowed hard. "It's not fair," he said, not sure to whom. "You weren't supposed to pay for my sins." Silas touched his arm. "Captain." Horace's face turned to stone. "We leave her here. Someone will come." "Sir, she'll live if the curse moves on." They lowered her gently onto the snowbank, under a lone cedar. Horace tucked the watch into her palm. "Forgive me when you wake," he said. Though he didn't believe forgiveness existed anymore, he climbed back onto the sled. The runners groaned, cutting lines through the white. Alara's hand twitched once, but he didn't see. Silas looked back until the dark swallowed her shape. Dawn edged over the ridge, thin and bitter. Alara blinked against the light, lips cracked. The cold pressed like hands on her chest. She tried to move, couldn't. Then, through the white blur of morning, she saw it. A dark shape cresting the hill, lantern swinging low, and beside it a dog trotting steady. The sound of hoofbeats grew clearer, rhythm sure, unhurried, like salvation that didn't need to announce itself. Alara let her eyes close again, trusting the sound to find her. The snow was turning gray when the horse's shadow broke through it. Malachi Reed leaned low in the saddle, the wind needling his face raw. Sentinel trotted ahead, nose down, tail a streak of determination. The dog barked once, then twice, short, certain. Malachi followed the sound until he saw a small shape slumped beneath a cedar. He reined in and dismounted fast, boots sinking deep. "Hey," he called softly. "You alive there?" No answer, just the whistle of wind. He knelt, brushed snow from her face. The girl's lips were pale, lashes rimmed with ice. Her fingers were stiff around a silver watch. He pressed 2 fingers to her neck. A pulse. Faint, but there. "You held on," he murmured. "Good." He wrapped his coat around her, lifted her carefully. She weighed less than the coat itself. Sentinel circled once, barking toward the east as if cursing whoever left her here. Malachi didn't look that way. There'd be time for anger later. He laid her across his horse, climbed up behind, arms forming a brace around her. "Easy now," he whispered. "We're going home." The ride back to Black River Ranch took hours through the slush. He felt her shiver against him, but she didn't wake. When her head lolled, he adjusted the coat closer, steadying her breathing. The rhythm of hoofbeats mixed with the slow knock of his heart. Steady, certain. By the time they reached the cabin, night had settled again. Warm lamplight spilled from the window. Inside, Miriam Cole was stoking the fire. When she saw them through the frost, she pushed open the door without a word. "Put her here," she said. Malachi laid the girl on the cot by the hearth. Miriam's hands were quick, checking breath, skin, pupils. "Frozen near through. One leg broken bad. I'll fetch the splints." He moved like a man who'd done this before. Miriam cut away the soaked fabric, her voice calm, her eyes sharp. "She's been through hell. Left at a crossroads," he said quietly. "Somebody figured the cold could finish what they started." Miriam looked at him. "You think it was kin?" He didn't answer. He was already carving 2 strips of pine smooth enough to touch her skin. When the fire burned high, they set the bone. She cried out once, sharp, weak, and then went still. Miriam's brow furrowed. "She needs heat, broth, rest." Malachi covered her with blankets. Sentinel lay at the bedside, head on paws, eyes on her face as if guarding something fragile. Hours passed before she stirred. Her voice was barely a breath. "Where am I?" "Safe," Malachi said. "Black River Ranch. Name's Malachi Reed." Her gaze fluttered between his face and the glow of the fire. "You found me." "Or Sentinel did," he said. "He's got a nose for lost things." She looked down at the watch still clutched in her palm. The hinge caught the light again. "My father. Did he send you?" Malachi's voice was soft. "No. But you're found all the same." Tears welled, more from exhaustion than grief. "He thought it was a curse," she whispered. "Said it'd follow him through me." Malachi looked into the fire. "Don't much believe in curses," he said. "Just fear wearing different names." Alara blinked at him, as if trying to see what kind of man could speak that gently in a world so hard. Rest now, he said. Tomorrow we'll set things straight. Her eyes closed, her breath evened, the wind outside slowed to a sigh. Miriam watched him quietly. You'll keep her here? He nodded. Till she can stand. Maybe longer. Looks like you've found a reason to stay put, Mal. He didn't answer. Instead, he took a rag, wiped the blood from his hands, and laid it on the table beside the watch. The words engraved inside caught his eye. The truth shall set you free. He exhaled slow. Let's hope it does, he said. Outside, the dog lifted his head and growled low, then stilled, as if the night had told him to wait. The next morning broke cold and quiet, the kind of light that made everything look forgiven. A thin mist rolled across the meadow behind the cabin. Inside, the fire still burned low, and the smell of pine smoke and chamomile filled the air. Ilara woke to the sound of soft humming. Ba Miriam was beside her, grinding herbs in a clay bowl. Welcome back, child, she said. You've been out a day and a half. Ilara tried to sit, but pain flared up her leg. Malachi appeared from the other room, tall and steady, carrying a steaming cup. Best not, he said. You'll open the wound. He crouched beside her, his face calm but alert. Drink this. Helps with the fever. She took the cup with shaking hands. The tea was bitter and warm. You saved me, she whispered. Malachi shrugged lightly. Just happened to be riding where the wind pointed me. Her eyes found Sentinel by the door, tail thumping once. And him? Found him same way, Malachi said. Half-starved, but still loyal. Guess we both know what that's like. Ilara studied him. His hands were calloused, shirt sleeves rolled, a faint scar cutting across his forearm. Not the hands of a doctor, but the touch was careful, like he'd spent years learning where pain hides. You're a rancher? She asked. Was, he said. Used to break horses for pay. Now I fix what's left of 'em. She managed a faint smile. You sound more healer than handler. Miriam chuckled from the hearth. He's both, depending on what the day asks. A long pause filled the room. Outside, a crow cried once, carried off by the wind. Ilara's fingers brushed the chain of her watch. My father, she began, then stopped. Malachi waited. He said we were cursed, that love only brings loss. Time 400s. Her voice thinned, almost breaking. And maybe he's right. Every time I try to save someone, it costs more than I have. Malachi looked at the fire, his expression unreadable. A man who's been burned by his own mistakes will call the flame a curse. Doesn't make it truth. She blinked at that. Simple words. But something in them cracked her fear open just enough for light to enter. He adjusted the splint at her leg, his touch firm yet careful. You'll heal, he said softly. Might take time, but bones learn to forgive too. For a moment, she forgot the cold, the pain, the betrayal. All she felt was warmth, the kind that didn't demand anything in return. When he rose to fetch more firewood, She noticed the empty cradle in the corner, draped with an old blanket. Something about the way he glanced at it, too quickly, almost tenderly, made her chest tighten. "Who was the baby?" she asked softly. Malachi paused, just long enough for silence to answer. "Not mine," he said. "Didn't stay long in this world. Belonged to a woman who never made it through the fever. I built the cradle anyway." Ilara closed her eyes, guilt and compassion tangling inside her. He turned away, voice steady again. "Rest. World's kinder when you wake to it slowly." She watched him move about the cabin, measured, quiet, every action a prayer of habit. In that rhythm she felt a strange safety, as if someone had finally decided not to give up on her. Outside, Sentinel barked once. Distant hooves echoed faintly beyond the ridge. Miriam glanced at Malachi. "Expecting someone?" He shook his head. "No." The sound came again, closer this time. Malachi moved to the window, hand brushing the rifle that hung untouched on the wall. But when he looked out, his expression eased. "It's just a rider cutting through," he said. Still, his eyes lingered on the trail longer than needed, like a man who's learned not to trust easy. Ilara watched him from the cot, the firelight catching in his eyes, the calm strength in his shoulders. She wanted to ask why he'd risked so much for a stranger, but the words stayed locked behind her gratitude. Instead, she whispered, "Thank you." He turned, offered a faint smile. "You'll pay me back by getting better." The warmth of the fire deepened. The wind outside had softened to a hum. Ilara's eyelids grew heavy, the weight of exhaustion pulling her down into something that felt like peace. The last thing she heard before slipping under was Miriam's quiet voice by the door. "She's strong, Mal, but so are her ghosts." Malachi replied, barely above a whisper, "Then we'll let the living ones keep her company." Outside, Sentinel lifted his head again and whined low, the sound of a watchful promise. The storm that had swallowed the valley finally broke. By dawn, sunlight spilled over the frozen pasture like mercy poured slow and steady. Inside the cabin, the air smelled of clean wood, burnt herbs, and something faintly sweet, life returning. Ilara woke to birdsong. Her leg was wrapped tight, pain dulled by warmth and time. She turned her head. Malachi was by the window, trimming splints from a strip of pine, the knife moving with quiet patience. Sentinel slept at his boots. "Morning," she said softly. He glanced over. "Reckon it is." "How long has it been?" 3 days. You're tougher than you look." She smiled faintly. "I heard that once before. Didn't believe it then either." He set the knife down and came closer, kneeling beside her. "Pain better?" "Enough to remember I'm alive." He checked the bindings with careful fingers, tightening where the swelling had gone down. "That's good news where I come from." His hands were warm, steady. For a moment she felt safer than she had in years. When he finished, he placed a mug beside her. "Tea, willow bark and daisies, Helps the bones talk nice again. She lifted it, the scent sharp and comforting. You made this yourself? Learned a few tricks after the war, he said simply. She studied his face, stillness in his eyes, lines carved by endurance more than age. You lost someone? He nodded once. We all did. Some losses just stay quiet longer. She held his gaze, then looked away. You talk like a preacher, but you move like a farmer. He smiled faintly. Guess I'm both. Feed the living, bury the rest. A silence followed, easy and full. The fire popped softly. Alara reached for her notebook on the side table, half-burnt pages for sketches and thoughts. She wrote slowly, letters trembling, notes about the herbs, the treatments, his method with splints. Malachi watched her for a while. You learn quick. Writing keeps me from thinking too much, she said. And I've always wanted to study medicine. My father said it wasn't a woman's place. He leaned back against the wall, eyes thoughtful. Places are just lines drawn by men scared of being left behind. Her heart tightened at that. You really don't believe in curses, do you? He shook his head. Only in the ones we make ourselves. The cabin door creaked open, wind bringing a scatter of frost. Ba Miriam stepped in, cheeks pink from the cold. Letters came from town, she said, handing Malachi a folded paper. Silas Whitlow brought them, said to tell the girl her father's sober. Alara froze. Sober? Miriam nodded. Said he wants to make things right. Malachi's eyes moved from Alara to the paper in his hand. You want to see him? She hesitated. I don't know. You don't have to decide today, he said. Not until you can stand on both legs. But something in her had already shifted, like thawed ice running in secret channels. Outside, a wind change moaned through the trees. The sky went suddenly dim, clouds rolling fast from the west. Sentinel lifted his head, growling low. Malachi looked toward the window. That wind's wrong, he murmured. The dog pressed close to Alara's cot. From somewhere down the slope, faint hooves thudded against the hard ground. Stay here, Malachi said, reaching for his coat. But before he could open the door, a loud knock rattled the hinges. He unlatched it slowly, one hand near the jamb. Silas Whitlow stood there, breath white, eyes frantic. Malachi, Captain's awake. He's talking straight, but it's bad. He's asking for her. Malachi looked back at Alara, who gripped the edge of the blanket, heart pounding. He nodded once to Silas. Tell him he'll see her when she's ready. The wind shoved through again, whistling sharp around the eaves, like a warning. The sky turned copper by late afternoon, heavy with a storm that hadn't yet decided its direction. The wind moved through the valley in long sighs, stirring the dead grass by the fence. Inside the cabin, Alara sat propped up on pillows, the silver watch resting in her lap. Malachi poured hot water into a basin, steam curling up like ghosts of old winters. Doctor would tell you to stay put, he said, wringing out a cloth. I've been sitting for weeks, she replied softly. It's time I learned to stand. He smiled a little. Then start by listening. He helped her shift the splint, testing weight on her leg. Pain pinched her breath. But she stayed upright longer than either expected. When she sank back down, he caught her arm before she could feel. His hand lingered a second too long. Steady, reassuring, something she hadn't felt since childhood. Miriam looked up from the table, her eyes knowing. Storm's brewing out there. Might be best you both take stock of what's comin'. Malachi nodded, but his gaze stayed on Alara. You sure you're ready to see him? She didn't answer at first. The word father still felt raw in her mouth. If I don't face him now, I'll keep waking up hearing his voice in my head. Miriam folded her hands. Sometimes forgiveness ain't a gift. It's a wound you clean yourself. Alara exhaled, shaky but resolute. Then I'll start cleaning. Malachi set the basin aside. 3 days, he said quietly. We'll go to him in 3 days. Gives the sky time to settle, and your leg time to hold. She nodded, though fear crept at the edges of her resolve. He stood, reaching for his coat. Storm like this. The wind brings news before the riders do. Let's make sure we're ready for either. As he stepped outside, the first gust slammed the door open. He caught it, looked up. Overhead, a flock of crows wheeled low and tight, a dark river in the sky. Miriam joined him at the threshold. You see that? He nodded. They're flying east. Means the pressure's droppin'. Storm will hit before nightfall. Then you best tether the horses, she said. He hesitated, watching the dark horizon. No, he murmured. No creature should be tied when thunder comes. Back inside, Alara folded her hands around the watch, feeling its weight like an old heartbeat. She whispered the words engraved inside. The truth shall set you free, and wondered whether that truth would hurt or heal. Night crept early, thick and restless. Malachi returned smelling of rain. He set a lamp by her bed. If the storm knocks the power out, this'll keep till morning. She looked up at him. Do you ever fear what truth might bring? He paused. Every man does. But I learned that lies don't keep us any warmer. Lightning flashed in the distance, white against the black hills. The thunder followed slow, like a giant clearing his throat. Miriam set a kettle on the stove. I'll say this, she murmured. When wind changes sudden, it don't just bring weather. It brings reckoning. They listened. Outside, the first drops hit the roof. Sharp, impatient. Then came the sound of a horse galloping through the wet, hooves drumming hard. Sentinel barked once, twice, and bolted to the door. Malachi opened it, lantern light spilling out into the rain. Silas Whitlow reined up, soaked to the bone, hat clutched tight. Mal! He shouted over the wind. Captain sober, sold half the herd, paid a month's debt. He says he's coming to make peace. Malachi frowned. Tonight? He swore it, storm or no storm. Behind him, Alara's voice trembled. He's coming here? Silas nodded. Said he'll ride through the night if he has to. Thunder cracked closer, echoing through the valley. Malachi looked toward the black ridge, where lightning stitched the sky. "Then let him come," he said quietly. "But no man rides through that and stays the same." Rain hammered the roof harder. Inside, Alara's hand tightened around the watch, her pulse beating to the rhythm of the storm outside. Somewhere in the distance, a single bell tolled, slow, hollow, and far too early for morning. By the second morning, the rain had thinned to a silver drizzle. Mud clung to the fence posts, and the hills wore the color of tarnished copper. The storm had passed, but its echo still trembled in the air. Alara sat near the window, a shawl drawn around her shoulders. The world outside was washed clean, quiet, almost shy. Malachi stood behind her, shoulders still damp from checking the stock. "He's close," he said. "Silas rode ahead. Said your father's an hour out." She nodded, her hands tightening on the watch chain. "I thought I'd have longer." He studied her face. "You can still change your mind." She shook her head. "No, I've run enough." Miriam came in with a tray. Coffee, bread, the smell of something sweet. "Eat before you face him," she said. "You'll need more than courage." Alara smiled faintly, but didn't touch the food. She stared at her reflection in the fogged glass instead. Pale, older somehow, eyes steadier. "Do you think people can unlearn the things they were raised to fear?" Malachi leaned against the post. "Not easy," he said. "But sometimes it starts with listening." Thunder murmured far off, a reminder the storm wasn't quite gone. When Horace finally appeared at the ridge, his silhouette was smaller than she remembered, less like a soldier, more like a man who'd been losing a battle alone. His horse stumbled through the mud, the reins loose in his grip. Miriam stepped outside first. "Captain Whitlow," she greeted carefully. Horace dismounted, tipping his hat. "Ma'am." His voice cracked on the word. Malachi came forward, one hand resting near his belt. Not on a weapon, just steady. "She's inside," he said. "You'll see her, but you'll keep your tone kind. She's still healing." Horace's jaw flexed. "You think I came here to do harm? I think you came here not knowing what harm is anymore." They locked eyes for a long moment, before Horace nodded once. "Fair." Inside, Alara waited by the patakon table. When he stepped through the door, his boots left dark stains on the floor. He looked older than the house itself, eyes hollow, beard gray at the edges. "Father," she said quietly. His lips trembled. "Alara." For a moment, they only stared, two ghosts trying to remember who they'd been. He cleared his throat. "I owe you 1,000 apologies, and none of them will do." She said nothing. He looked down at his hands. "I thought strength meant never bending. Turns out I was just too proud to bow." Her eyes filled, not with anger, but with the ache of recognition. "You left me to die." He flinched. "And every night since I did." Silence held the room, soft and terrible. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small velvet pouch. From it, he drew a gold ring, worn smooth, engraved faintly with a name she knew too well. Your mother's wedding band. She wanted you to have it when you found someone kind. Ilara's breath caught. And you think this makes it right? He shook his head. No, but maybe it starts to make it true. Tears blurred her vision. You can't fix the past with trinkets. I'm not here to fix it, he said, just to face it. She looked down at the ring, the light catching on its worn edge. I'm not ready to forgive you. I wouldn't trust you if you were. Something in his voice broke then. The first real crack of honesty she'd ever heard. Miriam quietly stepped out, giving them space. Malachi followed, leaving the door slightly ajar. Outside, the air smelled of rain and smoke. Inside, Ilara set the ring down on the table near her watch. You once said the Whitlows carry a curse, she whispered. Maybe it was never the land. Maybe it was silence. Horace's eyes lifted to hers. For the first time, there was no command in them, only remorse. He nodded slowly. Then maybe you're the one to end it. Lightning flickered again, dim but near. The wind pressed against the windows, humming through the cracks. From outside, a shout cut through the air. Silas's voice urgent. Malachi! There's a boy hurt. Fell from the barn loft. Malachi turned sharply. Whose? The Andersons' kid. Malachi grabbed his coat and doctor's bag. I'll go. Ilara's eyes followed him, worry threading through her calm. Horace frowned. You trust him that much? She held his gaze. I owe him my life. He looked away, guilt folding his shoulders. When the door closed behind Malachi, thunder rolled low, long and final, like a warning spoken too late. The storm came back with vengeance that night. Thick sheets of rain pounding the roof, thunder crawling along the horizon. The wind pushed against the cabin like a living thing trying to get in. Malachi rode out into it anyway, coat snapping behind him, sentinel running at his stirrup. The lantern swinging from his saddle carved trembling arcs of light in the darkness. Somewhere beyond the trees, the Andersons' barn waited, and the cry of a boy still echoed in his mind. Back at the cabin, Ilara sat by the fire, leg wrapped tight, heart pacing the room faster than her body could. Her father stared out the window, the flame painting his profile in uneven light. You should lie down, Horace said. I can't. He'll come back, he said. He's a capable man. You don't know him. Neither do you, he answered, too quickly. I know how he looks at pain, she breathed, like it's something he's already made peace with. Horace frowned. No man makes peace with pain. They just get better at hiding it. The wind howled through the shutters. Ilara reached for her watch, tracing the engraving with her thumb. Something metallic clicked beneath the lid. A seam she'd never seen. She pressed, and a thin panel shifted loose. Inside, a folded scrap of yellowed paper, wax cracked with age. Her breath caught. Mother. Horace turned. What did you say? She opened the letter. Fine, deliberate handwriting. "My dearest Ilara," it began. "If you ever read this, know that truth is kinder than silence. Your father carries a burden that isn't yours. The curse is only the name he gave his shame." "She knew," Ilara whispered. "All of it." Horace's face drained of color. "Where did you get that?" "In the watch. You gave it to her. She left the truth inside it." He staggered a step. "I never—" "Yes, you did," she said, voice trembling with fury and grief. "You hid behind curses and pride, but it was fear, wasn't it? You were afraid of being forgiven." His hand went to his chest, breath heavy. "You don't understand. She wanted to leave, to take you east. I couldn't let her." Ilara's eyes widened. "You stopped her?" His confession fell like a stone. "I burned the letter she wrote. I thought if I kept her here, I could make her love me again." Lightning tore white across the window. Ilara rose as far as her weak leg allowed. "You blamed a curse for what you did to her." "I lost her because I was afraid," he said hoarsely. "Afraid she'd see what kind of man I really was." Tears blurred her sight, but her voice steadied. "Then you see me now, and I see you." Dust shook from the rafters as the wind rattled the walls. Horace gripped the table to stay upright. "I'm not that man anymore," he whispered. "I can make it right." Ilara's anger gave way to sorrow. "You can't unmake pain, Father. You can only stop passing it down." Thunder boomed close. The lamp flickered out. Outside, hooves splashed through the mud. Malachi returning. The door burst open, wind and rain pouring in around him. His coat torn, hair plastered to his face. Sentinel limped behind. He dropped the doctor's bag on the table. "The boy's alive," he said, chest heaving. "But the bridge is near gone. If this keeps up, it'll wash out by dawn." His eyes found the open letter, and Horace's pale face. The air grew heavy, truth too thick to hide. Horace stared at him, wild, uncertain. You're the one who found her." "Yes, sir," Malachi said evenly. "And I'd do it again." Something old broke in Horace. Fear, pride, history. His hand twitched toward his coat pocket. Malachi didn't move. "You don't need that." "You took my daughter," Horace rasped. "I saved her," Malachi said. Rain hammered the roof, drowning the world. The hammer clicked once. "Father, no," Ilara cried. "It's the only way to end it," he whispered, eyes desperate and lost. Malachi stepped once, palms open. "You end a curse by facing it, not feeding it." Thunder rolled, shaking the timbers. Horace's arm wavered, breath went shallow. "I can't face what I've done," he said. The gun trembled, aimed not at Malachi, but at his own chest. Ilara lurched, her leg giving way. "Father!" A shot split the night. The echo hung there, hollow and endless, while rain swallowed the sound. The gunshot tore through the cabin's silence. then died in the roar of rain. Smoke drifted like a ghost over the hearth. Horace slumped backward, the pistol slipping from his grasp. The bullet had struck his shoulder, spinning him into the table. "Father!" Ilara cried, crawling toward him. The pain in her legs screamed, but she didn't care. Malachi was already moving, quick, steady. He knelt beside Horace, pressing his hand over the wound. "Through the shoulder," he said firmly. "No lung hit. He'll live if I stop the bleeding." Horace blinked, disoriented. Why didn't you let me go?" Malachi's hands were slick with blood. "Because dying ain't the same as making peace." He tore strips of linen from the curtain, packed the wound, and bound it tight. Ilara held the lamp closer, face pale but determined. "Stay with me," Malachi said. "Breathe when I say breathe." Horace's breath hitched between gasps and guilt. "You don't even know me." Malachi met his gaze. "I know enough. You're her father. That's reason enough." Ilara clutched her mother's letter in one hand, the watch still open in the other. She began to read aloud through trembling lips. "The curse is only the name he gave his shame." Horace flinched, tears mixing with sweat. "The truth shall set you free." Something in him cracked then, not bone but the hard shell around his heart. He whispered, "I did write her once, a letter begging forgiveness, but I never sent it." Malachi's eyes flicked to him. "You still can." Horace's voice was faint. "Would she read it? Where she is?" Ilara brushed his forehead. "Maybe I can read it for her." "It's in my chest pocket," he murmured. "All these years." Malachi reached for the folded envelope, stained with age and regret, and placed it in Ilara's trembling hands. She opened it carefully. The ink had bled, but the words still lived. "If love is a battlefield," she read, "I surrender. I surrender to the daughter who bears my heart." Her tears fell onto the page, smudging the past into mercy. Malachi tightened the bandage, fingers steady. "He'll pull through," he said. "But the fever'll come soon. I'll need to stay up with him." Ilara nodded, wiping her eyes. For hours the storm raged and dimmed. Malachi worked in silence, changing the dressing, cooling the fever. Ilara sat beside her father, whispering fragments of her mother's lullaby between breaths. Near dawn, Horace stirred. "Why, did you save me?" Malachi looked into the fire. "Because she asked me to." "You asked him?" Horace rasped. Ilara shook her head. "No words, just the way he lives." The old soldier's eyes welled again. "Then maybe that's what grace looks like." Malachi nodded once. "You're learnin'." Lightning flashed one last time, faint on the horizon, then faded. The wind fell quiet. Sentinel sighed and rested his head on the floorboards. Outside, the first line of dawn burned low in the east. Ilara leaned close, whispering to her father, "Rest now. Tomorrow we start over." Horace murmured, half in dream, "I never sent the letter." But maybe this was her answer all along. The fire snapped once, bright and brief. Ilara looked at Malachi, the way he sat watching the embers, shoulders bowed not from weakness, but from the weight of compassion. And in that quiet moment, she realized love didn't always arrive with thunder. It stayed, even after the storm was gone. The morning after the gunshot was the kind of quiet that feels earned. Mist hung low across the meadow, the color of pewter and forgiveness. Inside the cabin, the fire had burned down to ash. The smell of smoke and blood still lingered, mixed with the faint sweetness of willow bark tea. Horace Whitlow stirred in his cot, bandaged shoulder stiff and throbbing. His eyes blinked open to the gray light. For a moment, he didn't know where he was, until he saw his daughter asleep beside the hearth, one hand still clutching her mother's watch. Across the room, Malachi sat by the window, sharpening a knife against a whetstone. The sound was slow, even, steady as prayer. When Horace tried to move, the scrape of steel stopped. "Best stay still," Malachi said. "You lost a lot of blood." Horace's throat was dry. "And yet, still breathing. That your doing?" Malachi nodded once. "You can thank your daughter. She read your letter out loud. I reckon that stopped the bleeding faster than anything I did." Horace looked toward Ilara, her face peaceful in sleep, framed by pale hair and morning light. "She's still here," he murmured. "She's stronger than either of us," Malachi said. Silence held between them, thick, awkward, but not hostile. After a while, Horace said, "You could have let me die." "Not my kind of work," Malachi replied. "You a preacher, then?" "Used to be a soldier. Got tired of fighting everything but the right things." Horace gave a dry laugh that turned into a cough. "Right things," he echoed. "I wouldn't know what those are anymore." Malachi poured water into a tin cup and held it to him. "Start with this. Breathing's a right thing." Horace took a sip, wincing. "You talk like a man who's been broken." Malachi leaned on the post. "Maybe I have. But you learn something when you're lying in the dust long enough. You can't fix what you won't face." Horace's gaze drifted to the fire pit. "I spent half my life facing the wrong ghosts. Then it's time to face the living ones." The door creaked. Ilara stirred, waking slow. When she saw her father conscious, her breath caught. "You're awake," she said. He nodded. "Thanks to him." "Thanks to grace," Malachi said. Ilara sat by the cot, took her father's hand, the same hand that had once left her in the snow, and held it gently. "How do you feel?" "Unworthy," Horace said simply, "but alive." She smiled faintly. "That's a start." They stayed like that for a long while, old wounds breathing at last. When Miriam entered with breakfast, the smell of cornbread filled the room. "You three look like a family who's been through baptism," she said. "Something like that," Malachi answered. They ate in silence, Horace slowly, Ilara carefully feeding him when his arm failed him. After, Miriam cleared the dishes and left them alone again. Horace looked between them. "You two," he began, then stopped. "You're different together. She's not afraid near you." "Fear's a poor companion for healing," Malachi said. "And what happens when healing turns into something else?" Ilara's cheeks flushed, but her voice was calm. "Then it's still kindness, Father, just with a longer reach." Horace nodded slowly. "Your mother would have liked that answer." The light shifted, warming the room. Malachi repacked his kit. "I'll check the river before it floods again. Might be supplies washed down." "I'll go with you," Ilara said. "You should rest," Horace warned. "I've rested enough," she replied, and he didn't argue. Outside, the world smelled of wet earth and thawing snow. Sentinel ran ahead, barking at the sun as if testing whether it was real. The two walked to the river in quiet. The current was high, thick with silt and branches. "You've saved more people than I can count," she said. "Who saves you?" Malachi smiled faintly. "No one's asked me that before. I'm asking now." He looked out across the water. "Once I had a wife. We tried for years to start a family. Doctors said I couldn't. She died before spring came," he said softly. "Fever took her quick. I buried her out near the birches. Since then, I just build things, fix others. Seems easier than fixing myself." Ilara stepped closer. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," he said. "Some things just don't grow the way we planned." "But you still make them grow," she said. "You just do it with people." He looked at her a long time. "You got your mother's way of seeing." "Maybe that's why she left me the watch," Ilara said softly, "to remind me to keep looking." "Then keep looking, Ilara. Don't let the past blind you to what's in front." When they returned to the cabin, Horace was writing at the table, hand trembling, eyes clear. "I'm drafting a letter," he said, "to the army office in Helena. They're hiring field trainers. I can work again." "You'd leave?" Ilara asked. "I think I need to," he said. "A man's got to walk his own road to forgiveness." "You'll write to me?" "Every Sunday till you get tired of reading." That evening, Miriam packed him food for the road. The three stood by the fence as he saddled his horse. The wind carried the smell of spring, wet soil, young grass, a new start. "You have my thanks," Horace said quietly. Malachi shook his head. "You don't owe me anything." "Maybe not," Horace said, "but I owe her peace. You've given her that." He tipped his hat and rode toward the west, the sun behind him like a benediction. When the dust settled, Ilara stood in the quiet yard. "How's it feel?" Malachi asked. "Like a wound, finally closed." "Sometimes scars are what keep us honest," he said. "And what keeps you honest, Malachi Reed?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "The fact that I still care what becomes of you." Her heart ached. Not from pain, but from the gentle weight of something new. They went back inside as the evening settled. Malachi poured 2 cups of coffee, one for her, one for the empty space across the table. Later, as the fire died down, Ilara whispered, "You once said some things don't grow the way we planned. What if we plant something anyway? He looked at her, his expression softening. Then we see what takes root. She reached out, took his hand. For once, he didn't pull away. The night was warm for the first time in months. Sentinels slept at their feet. Outside, the stars burned low and steady, quiet witnesses to two souls finally learning to breathe in the same rhythm. Spring came slow to the Black River Valley, but when it did, it came all at once. Snow melted into dark veins that ran through the pastures, feeding the grass that had waited too long. Calves bawled at sunrise. The river shimmered under light instead of thunder, and the scent of lilac crept back through the wind like memory forgiven. Ilara stood on the porch, watching the mist lift off the hills. The leg that once refused her now held firm beneath her. A cane leaned forgotten against the doorframe, kept not to lean on, but to remember. Behind her, Malachi came out carrying 2 tin mugs of coffee. His sleeves were rolled, the sun catching the scar along his arm. "You're walking without the stick again," he said. She smiled. "Didn't realize you were counting." "Hard not to," he said, handing her the mug, steam curling between them. They stood in silence, watching the horses graze. The land looked lighter now, as if it too had learned how to forgive itself. A wagon creaked down the trail. Miriam perched high on the seat, reins loose in her easy hands. Behind her, a painted sign leaned against the barrels. "Your new project," she grinned. Malachi helped her unload. When they turned the sign upright, Ilara read aloud, voice trembling. "Read Whitlow Clinic. Healing hands for every soul." The paint was still wet, gleaming in the light. You did this?" she whispered. "Town needed a place," Malachi said. "You needed a calling. Figured the name belonged to both of us." Tears touched her smile. "Then yes." They carried the sign to the front of the cabin. Malachi drove 2 nails through the wood, firm but gentle, the way he did everything. "Looks like it's been waiting here all along," Miriam said. "Maybe it has," Ilara whispered. The days that followed were busy. Word spread fast across the valley. A new clinic opened on the river road, run by a woman who'd lived through her own kind of resurrection, and a man whose hands could fix bone, fence, or heart with the same quiet care. Farmers came first, sprains, cuts, frostbite. Then mothers with fevers, children with coughs. Ilara learned to set her table not for supper, but for healing. Malachi worked beside her, never hurrying, never harsh. Sometimes their hands brushed. Neither spoke of it. One evening, a letter arrived. Denver postmark, handwriting unsteady. "My dear daughter," it read. "Work keeps my hands busy, though the past keeps my mind awake. They call me captain again. The whiskey's gone and the guilt's turning to gratitude. Maybe that's what mercy feels like when it's new. Love, Horace." Ilara folded the letter, pressed it to her chest. "He's finding peace," she said. Malachi smiled. "That's more than most men get." "Maybe peace finds those who stop running," she answered. A week later, The first baby was born in the clinic. A rancher's wife, labor early, rain all night. Hours later, at dawn, the child's cry split the quiet. A sound so new, so alive, it made them both laugh and cry at once. When the mother slept, Ilara stood by the cradle. Malachi whispered, "You were made for this." "No one's made for anything," she said softly. "We just choose what to mend." He hesitated, then said, "Ilara, there's something I ought to tell you." She turned, heart quickening. "I can't give you children," he said quietly. "Doctors told me long ago. Thought you should know before." She laid a hand on his chest. "Before what?" "Before I ask you to stay." Her eyes filled. "Malachi, you've given me life twice already. I don't need anything more." "Still," he said, "it's truth." "And truth," she whispered, "has never scared me." They stood in that stillness, two souls out of words, and none needed. "Marry me," he said at last. "Say it, again," she breathed. "Be my wife." Her answer came like breath, simple, certain. "Yes." The next morning, the valley bloomed in sunlight. Miriam brought cornbread and wildflowers. Sentinel sat solemnly, tail still. Malachi wore his best shirt. Ilara, a white cotton dress mended twice but radiant in the light. They exchanged vows on the porch, the river murmuring behind them. When the words were spoken, Malachi kissed her once, steady, reverent, like a man giving thanks for something he thought he'd lost. Miriam clapped. "Well, that's that," she said. "The world feels right again." Later, Ilara hung a small brass bell beside the clinic's sign. The inscription read, "For every life that finds its way home." "Think anyone'll come?" Malachi asked. "They already have," she said. Just then, a wagon rolled up, the Anderson boy waving from the seat. His mother held a bundle of wildflowers. "For the doctors," she called. Ilara laughed. "We'll take 'em." "You hear that?" she asked. "What?" he said. "The world. It's moving forward again." "About time," Malachi smiled. They went inside, the bell chiming softly as the door closed. The room glowed with afternoon light, the scent of lavender, ink, and hope. Ilara looked at the jars, the herbs, the ledger filled with names, the pulse of a life built from ruin. "I used to think peace was something you found," Malachi said. "But it's something you build." "One breath, one day at a time," she answered. "Guess we're builders then," he said. "And keepers," she whispered, "of truth." Outside, the clinic bell rang once more, a soft, clear sound that drifted down the valley. The wind carried it toward the distant horizon, where a lone rider moved along the trail west. Horace Whitlow, tipping his hat toward the home he had finally left, in peace. Ilara watched until the figure vanished into the light. Then she turned to Malachi, voice quiet but full. "We're free now." He smiled. "Always were." just needed to believe it. The sun dipped, painting the sky with amber and rose. In that soft, endless light, they stood together. Two souls once broken, now whole in the simple miracle of staying. And as evening settled, the bell above the Reed Whitlow clinic swayed gently in the wind, ringing not as a call for help, but as a song of arrival.